Michael Foster's morning had started like any other. The soft hum of his coffee maker filled the kitchen of the old Victorian farmhouse he had recently inherited, the golden sunlight filtering through stained glass windows casting colorful patterns on the worn oak floor. Despite the creaks and occasional draft, this house felt like home, a link to his late grandmother, Eleanor Foster, who had lovingly cared for it for decades. As Michael stepped outside to check the mail, a crisp envelope pinned to the front door caught his eye. At first he assumed it was a flyer or junk mail, something common in the neighborhood. But as he approached, his brow furrowed. The envelope was elegant, cream-colored with embossed lettering. His name was printed in bold, flowing script. Michael Foster Gardens. His heart skipped a beat. Foster Gardens? That was the name his grandmother had always affectionately used for the sprawling gardens that surrounded the house. Roses, magnolias, and old oak trees woven into secret paths. But his name on an invitation and taped to his front door, Michael, carefully removed the envelope and opened it. Inside was an invitation to a wedding, one he had never heard of, hosted at Foster Gardens on a Saturday just 2 weeks away. Rebecca and Daniel Thornton request the honor of your presence at their wedding celebration. The details were lavish. A ceremony followed by a reception, elegant typography, and a glossy map marking the location as his very own property. Michael blinked, rereading the invitation. He had not been informed of any event, let alone a wedding, on his land. A cold wave of disbelief swept over him. Was this some sort of mistake, or a cruel prank? Michael paced the porch, the invitation clenched tightly in his hand. Who were Rebecca and Daniel Thornton? How could someone just use his private property for an event without his permission? His mind raced through possibilities. Maybe the HOA had arranged it, or some distant relative. The possibilities felt endless but frustratingly vague. The more he thought, the more infuriated he became. His phone buzzed, breaking his spiraling thoughts. A message popped up. Looking forward to celebrating at Foster Gardens. RSVP, yes. He realized the invitation was not only professional, but had been distributed to dozens, perhaps hundreds of guests. Michael's hands trembled. This wasn't just a prank. Someone was organizing a wedding on his property, without his knowledge. Worse, they were inviting strangers into his home, his sanctuary. He knew he needed answers. Michael had only recently moved back to Willowbrook after 10 years away in the city. An architect by profession, he had left the small town seeking new opportunities and the excitement of urban life. But after his grandmother's passing, the pull of family and legacy brought him home. The Victorian farmhouse had been a jewel in his grandmother's care, nestled on 5 acres on the outskirts of town. The estate, long neglected, was once a renowned private garden featured in Southern Living and other magazines decades ago. Michael had dreamed of restoring the gardens to their former glory, reviving the legacy Eleanor had left behind. But since his return, he'd noticed the subtle encroachment of the local HOA, the Willowbrook Heritage Association, whose influence in the town seemed to grow each day. He hadn't expected their reach to stretch onto his private property, let alone for them to host a wedding without asking. Despite its current state, Michael saw the potential in Foster Gardens. The massive oak trees arched over the winding pathways, and remnants of Eleanor's carefully curated flower beds still bloomed sporadically through the wild growth. His grandmother had loved this land, and the community respected it as a piece of local history. Foster Gardens was not just a home, but a symbol, a rare pocket of untouched beauty surrounded by modern development. Michael wanted to preserve that, ensure the estate remained untouched by the sprawling suburban expansions and the growing HOA regulations that threatened the character of the land. This unauthorized wedding struck him as a violation, not just of his privacy but of everything his grandmother had protected. With mounting frustration, Michael dialed the number printed on the invitation. The line rang twice before a sharp female voice answered. "This is Rebecca Thornton." Her tone was brisk, almost dismissive. "This is Michael Foster. This invitation says you're hosting a wedding on my property. I have no record of this event and did not give permission." Rebecca's voice hardened. "I don't know who told you that. The wedding is booked through the Willowbrook Heritage Association. Foster Gardens is listed as a historic public site. This is a community event." Michael felt his blood boil. "My property is private, and my grandmother never agreed to this. You can't just list my land without my consent." "Listen, Mr. Foster," Rebecca said coolly. "This isn't up for debate. The HOA handles bookings for historic venues. If you want to dispute this, you'll have to speak with them." The line went dead. Michael stared at his phone, the weight of the situation sinking in. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It was a calculated move, backed by the powerful HOA, trying to strong-arm him. The fight for Foster Gardens had just begun. Michael sat at his cluttered kitchen table, laptop open, frustration mounting. After the call with Rebecca Thornton, he dove headfirst into research. The Willowbrook Heritage Association, WHA, was more than just a neighborhood group. They wielded surprising legal power over properties in the area, especially those deemed historic. He discovered the HOA had quietly lobbied the town council for authority to regulate not only architectural styles and landscaping, but also public use of private, historic properties. Foster Gardens was apparently listed in town records as a community historic site, though Michael had never been notified or consented. The more he read, the more he realized the HOA had skirted usual legal procedures. No proper notification, no formal transfer of rights. They had effectively leased or rented his property to third parties under the guise of preservation, but without his permission or compensation. The injustice stung deeply. They were exploiting his family's legacy for their own benefit, trampling over his rights as the rightful owner. Determined to confront the source of the problem, Michael drove to the WHA's modest office, nestled behind a strip mall in Willowbrook's commercial district. The receptionist's cool smile did little to ease his nerves. He asked to see the HOA president, Karen Malone, a name that came up repeatedly in his research as the driving force behind the association's aggressive expansions. After a tense wait, Karen appeared, a sharply dressed woman in her mid-40s, exuding an air of authority and control. Her gaze was calculating as she shook Michael's hand. "So you're the new owner of Foster Gardens," she said with a hint of condescension. "I've heard quite a bit about you." Michael didn't waste time. "I'm here because your association is holding events on my property without my permission. The wedding invitation taped to my door. Was that you?" Karen smiled thinly. "We're preserving the heritage of the neighborhood. Foster Gardens is a treasure, and it belongs to the community, not just one man. The wedding is fully approved by the board." Michael's jaw tightened. "You don't have my permission, and you have no right to treat my property as public land." Karen's smile faded. "We have legal counsel. The town supports us. If you want to challenge the HOA, be prepared for a fight." Refusing to back down, Michael returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. He contacted a local attorney specializing in property rights and historic preservation. The lawyer urged him to request copies of all HOA contracts and agreements regarding Foster Gardens. After a tense week, the HOA reluctantly provided a stack of paperwork. Michael and his attorney combed through the documents, and what they uncovered was shocking. Forged signatures on several key agreements, including one that purportedly transferred event rights to the HOA. It was a clear case of fraud. Someone within the HOA had falsified Eleanor Foster's signature after her passing to gain control of the estate. This revelation gave Michael hope, but also made him realize how deep the corruption ran. Michael knew he couldn't fight the powerful HOA alone. He began reaching out to neighbors, local business owners, and historical societies. Some residents sympathized, sharing their own stories of HOA overreach and intimidation. Others were fearful, unwilling to oppose Karen Malone's well-funded and connected organization. Determined to build momentum, Michael organized a community meeting at the local library, inviting the media, local historians, and concerned citizens. He presented the forged documents, the unauthorized wedding invitation, and the blatant disregard for property rights. His passion and clear evidence resonated with many attendees. Slowly, a coalition formed, neighbors ready to stand against the HOA's abuses and preserve their community's true heritage. With public support growing, Michael's attorney filed a formal lawsuit against the Willowbrook Heritage Association, challenging the forged documents and unauthorized use of foster gardens. Michael spent nights preparing affidavits, gathering photographs of the property, and documenting every interaction with the HOA. He also contacted event vendors who had been booked for the wedding, warning them of the ongoing dispute and urging them to cancel. As the wedding day approached, tension in the community rose. Karen Malone doubled down, sending legal threats and hiring private security to guard the property. Michael knew this fight was more than just about a wedding. It was a battle for his family's legacy, his home, and the soul of Willowbrook itself. The morning of the wedding arrived with thick gray clouds hanging low over Foster Gardens. The grand estate, usually serene and quiet, buzzed with activity. Tents were being erected, caterers moved hurriedly, and guests began to arrive, many unaware of the underlying turmoil. Michael stood at the edge of the property, watching the scene with a mix of anger and determination. Private security hired by the HOA patrolled the grounds, their presence an intimidating reminder of the escalating conflict. When Michael approached the security team to assert his ownership rights, he was met with cold refusal. The guards insisted. They were authorized by the HOA to protect the event. Tensions rose quickly as Michael tried to physically enter his own property, only to be blocked by men twice his size. The neighbors gathered, some supportive, others hesitant, but the atmosphere was charged. Just as the standoff seemed about to escalate into violence, a surprising figure emerged from the crowd. Rebecca Thornton, the local historical society director who had first tipped Michael off. Rebecca stepped forward and addressed the group with calm authority. She revealed that the Historical Society had been unaware of the forged documents and had never officially endorsed the HOA's use of foster gardens for private events. Her testimony shifted the tide of public opinion. She urged the security to stand down and called on the community to respect Michael's legal rights as the property owner. Her intervention diffused the tension, and the security guards reluctantly withdrew, leaving the grounds quieter, but still under scrutiny. Over the next few months, the court case unfolded with intense media coverage. Michael's attorney presented irrefutable evidence of forgery and fraud by the HOA leadership. Under mounting pressure, the Willowbrook Heritage Association's board was forced to step down. Karen Malone resigned amid allegations of misconduct and was later investigated for criminal forgery. The court ruled in Michael's favor, affirming his full ownership rights over Foster Gardens and ordering the HOA to cease any unauthorized use of the property. The victory was a significant blow to the HOA's unchecked power and a hopeful sign for others in the community who had suffered similar abuses. With legal battles behind him, Michael focused on restoring Foster Gardens to its former glory, not as a public event venue, but as a private family home and historic landmark. He partnered with local historians, architects, and landscapers to repair damage caused by the recent events and the unauthorized activities. Slowly, the estate began to reflect the dignity and respect it deserved, becoming a symbol of resilience and rightful ownership. Michael opened the gardens occasionally for educational tours and communities events, but strictly controlled and with his full approval. The ordeal left lasting scars, but also sparked a renewed sense of community among Willowbrook residents. Neighbors, who had once been divided, found common ground in supporting property rights and transparent governance. Michael became a local advocate for homeowner rights, speaking at town meetings and helping other residents navigate conflicts with overreachings. Associations. While the battle had been hard-fought, it ultimately united the town in protecting the integrity of their homes and heritage, ensuring the legacy of places like Foster Gardens would be honored on their terms.